Hi, welcome to GoPro Tutorials and Films. I'm Jared Rumler, and in this tutorial we're going to be looking at what the GoPro can do for you in low light situations. As you may know, GoPro's low light capabilities aren't the greatest simply because the sensor size is so small in comparison to a DSLR that has a full frame sensor or even a 4/3 sensor. But there is a couple of tips and tricks that GoPro have put into their cameras that can get you the best quality if you're shooting in low light and you've only got your GoPro. Now, one of the first tips and tricks that I've realized is that your ISO. Now, the point is that they have a default ISO limit to 6400. Now, when you put the 6400, the footage is basically unusable. The noise is so bad, you might as well just not shoot in the first place. But there is a sort of a sweet spot that you can sort of hit with the ISO limit. Now, I'd say if it's got enough light, you can go to 1600. Now, this will mean that when you put a denoiser onto it, it will get rid of most of the noise and it'll be usable. But if there's not that much light, you can push it maybe to 3200. Now, 3200 is twice as much as 1600, meaning hence there's going to be twice as much noise, but it'll give twice as much light if you don't have that amount of light. You can add a denoiser to it, and if you really have to use that footage, then I'd recommend going to 3200 as your maximum ISO limit. Now, the next setting that GoPro's put in there to help you get the best quality from your low light settings is the frame rate. Now, frame rate is one of the most important things to play around with when you're in low light issues. The reason why this is so important is because if you're shooting at 4K 30, there's only going to be a 1/30th of a second that each picture can get light in. But then if you change the frame rate to 24, it gives a little bit more, and it just brings it up to 1/24th of a second. Is that how much light it could be let in? And this small difference actually makes a big difference overall. Now, if we show you a 30 FPS shot right here, but then if you look against to a 24 FPS, you'll notice that the 24 has a noticeable amount of more light. This is simply because the 24 lets a little bit more light in comparison to the 30 FPS. Now, GoPro have put a little bit of software called the low light. When you're shooting at 1080-60 or 2.7K 60, you can turn this thing on. Now, the reason why I don't like shooting this in the first place is what it basically does is that if you move in between lights, so you're in a light room, it will stick to 60 frames. But then it'll smartly integrate the frame rate into when it goes into lower light. So when you go into lower light, it'll drop the frame rate to maybe 24. In my opinion, I'd rather just have it at 24 the whole entire time so you don't drop frames and the video looks natural and good quality. Now, the next tip that I would recommend is you're shooting outside, always try to shoot on a full moon. Now, this will give you a little bit more light, meaning you don't have to boost that ISO up as much, or you don't have to play around with the frame rates, you don't have to add noise. This little bit of the full moon can actually do a noticeable amount of difference when you're actually shooting in low light. And even better, if you have a phone, which nearly everyone does nowadays, the LED light that it has on its phone, on the camera, that is extremely helpful if you're shooting in with a low light and a GoPro. You just stick the LED onto the GoPro with maybe a bit of sticky tape, or you just literally hold the phone with the GoPro, and that'll simply give you the opportunity of then adding more light to your shot without actually doing much work at all and not having to boost that ISO. So here's an example of without the phone, and now I'm going to add the phone in, and you can noticeably see the difference that it is a lot more detail when you put the phone on. And it's a simple solution because nearly everyone where they go will have their phone with them. So I recommend if you're ever shooting in low light and you need that detail in the darks, then you definitely need to have your phone LED on as well. The last thing I want you guys to play around with would be your color profile and your white balance. Now, putting your color profile on flat and your white balance on natives makes the image flatter, meaning you get more detail out of the shadows, which when you're shooting in light, basically everything is shadows. There's barely no highlights or no midtones. So putting this on the simple setting of just putting it on low light will increase your quality of video by tenfold. Alright guys, that's my basic tutorial of just how to get the best quality you can from shooting in low light with the GoPro Hero 4 Black. In fact, any camera really. And I hope you guys enjoy it. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.